Inspired by the lessons from Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. This story explores the journey of a young boy discovering the true meaning of financial freedom. Ammar was 12 years old when his world split into two very different realities, though he didn't realize it at first. His father, Professor Hamid, was a man of dignity, intelligent, respected, and deeply committed to the belief that education was the highest virtue. Every morning he tied the same worn tie with a quiet sense of pride, walked to the government school where he taught literature, and came home exhausted but content. He believed that life's greatest achievement was to live respectably without creating problems for anyone. He maintained that a stable job, a stable salary, and a stable routine were the keys to a good life. Money doesn't matter, he always said gently. Character matters. And Ammar believed him, until the day he experienced, for the first time, the sharp sting of being seen as the poor kid. It was a bright Saturday morning when the wealthy children of his school climbed into a luxury van decorated with stickers from foreign countries. They were heading to a private beach resort for the weekend. Ammar and his friend Zain stood nearby, hopeful but knowing the invitation would never reach them. Their hope shattered when one of the boys leaned out of the window and said, "Sorry, guys, it's only for members." The door slid shut, the van pulled away, and Ammar felt something within him break. That moment carved a wound in his young mind, a wound filled with embarrassment, confusion, and an overwhelming desire for something more, something he did not yet know how to name. That night he went home unusually quiet. While his father sipped tea and read the newspaper, Ammar finally gathered the courage to ask, "Abu, how can I become rich?" His father looked up, surprised, almost offended. "Why do you want to be rich? Study hard, get good marks, and you'll get a secure job. That is enough. Money is not important." But Ammar felt the weight of the rich boy's laughter echoing in his mind. He wanted choices. He wanted freedom. He wanted to decide how to live, not be told by circumstances. "But Abu," he whispered, "what if I want more than a job?" The disappointment in his father's eyes hurt more than the rejection earlier. Ammar felt torn, trapped between his father's honorable beliefs and the reality he had tasted that morning. A reality where money controlled confidence, opportunities, and identity. The next day he shared everything with Zain. They sat on an old bench in the park, the wind swaying the dry leaves at their feet. Zain listened quietly, then said, "If you want to learn how rich people think, you should talk to my father." Ammar stared at him. "Your father? He doesn't even act like he's rich." And that was true. Unlike the flashy parents at school, Zain's father, Mr. Karim, dressed in faded cotton shirts, drove an old pickup truck, and lived in a simple house. But Ammar also knew he owned several small businesses, rented properties, vending machines, storage units, and even some online ventures before people understood the internet's potential. He was always working, always dealing with numbers, always observing. There was a strange calmness in the way he carried himself, as if he knew something others did not. Ammar and Zain approached him that evening. Karim listened silently, his eyes sharp and thoughtful. After a long pause, he finally said, "So, you want to learn how money works?" Both boys nodded eagerly. Karim leaned back in his chair and replied, "I will teach you, but not the way your school teaches. Not through books. Not through memorizing. You will learn by doing. If you want me to teach you, you will work for me. No questions. No quitting. No complaining." Ammar agreed, though he did not understand what he was stepping into. Their first task was at Karim's small grocery shop. Every Saturday, from early morning until noon, Ammar and Zain dusted shelves, arranged products, and carried boxes that felt heavier every week. Their clothes smelled of cardboard and spices. Dust clung to their hair. But the hardest part wasn't the labor, it was the wage. Karim paid each of them only 10 rupees for 3 long hours. Ammar stared at the 3 coins in his palm each week, feeling insulted and confused. He could barely buy a candy with it. Meanwhile, his father warned him that this was exploitation and that he should demand more or quit. But something deep inside Ammar urged him to continue, even though he was too young to understand why. By the 4th week, Frustration boiled over. He shouted at Zane, "I'm done. He is cheating us. This is humiliation, not learning." Zane simply smiled. "My dad said this moment would come. He said to bring you to him when you reach this point." So the next morning they walked into Kareem's home. Ammar confronted him with trembling anger. "You promised to teach us how to be rich, but all we do is work like slaves. You haven't taught me anything. You don't respect us. You pay us peanuts." Kareem listened, then said calmly, "Good. Finally, you are awake." Ammar blinked, confused. Kareem leaned forward. Lesson 1. The poor and middle class work for money. The rich make money work for them. Ammar frowned. He did not understand. Kareem smiled. "And now that you are angry, your mind is open. So from next week, you will work for free." Ammar's jaw dropped. "Free?" Kareem tapped the boy's forehead lightly. "Do you want money to control your life forever? Or do you want to learn how to control money? Choose." In that moment, Ammar felt the sting of humiliation replaced by a strange spark. Curiosity, pride, determination. Despite his anger, he whispered, "I will learn, even for free." Kareem smiled, satisfied. "Then your real education begins now." The following weeks were brutal. Working without pay felt like being invisible. Ammar missed buying comics. He missed small treats. Missing even these little pleasures made him realize how deeply people depend on their salaries to feel alive. That was exactly the lesson Kareem wanted them to understand. One afternoon, after they finished sweeping, Ammar noticed Mrs. Nadia, the shop supervisor, doing something curious. She tore the front covers off old comic books and tossed the rest into a large box. When Ammar asked why, she explained that the distributors gave credit for unsold covers, so the books themselves were trash. As she walked away, Ammar's mind suddenly lit up. Kids in the neighborhood loved comics. Ammar loved comics. These books were free. He had access to them. People loved entertainment. His mind raced. This was an opportunity that others walked past every day without noticing. He and Zane collected the discarded comics, cleaned them, and created a small, comic reading box. They charged 1 rupee for reading, 10 for deposit, and limited reading time to 10 minutes each. Children lined up. The boys earned more in 2 afternoons than in weeks of work. They reinvested the money, repaired more books, and expanded. That night, Ammar lay awake, staring at the ceiling, realizing something profound. Money had come from his mind, not his muscles. From seeing differently, not from working harder. That feeling of creating money instead of chasing it was more powerful than anything he had experienced. When they told Kareem about it, he nodded proudly. "Now you see what others do not. Now you're learning to make money work for you." As Ammar grew older, Kareem continued teaching him deeper truths: how fear controls most people, how desire blinds them, how schools teach obedience instead of financial intelligence, how buying luxuries before assets kept people trapped, how jobs were temporary but knowledge was permanent. Ammar watched adults rushing to work with tired faces, living from paycheck to paycheck with fear eating them alive. They were slaves not to their bosses but to their emotions. He promised himself that he would never live that way. Years passed. Ammar turned 22, worked part-time, studied business, and built small online ventures using everything Kareem taught. But then life delivered its harshest lesson. Professor Hamid, after decades of loyalty, lost his government job due to budget cuts. The shock hit the household like a storm. Ammar watched his father crumble, this man who believed so deeply in stability. He walked around the house in silence, eyes lost, dignity shaken. He muttered, "I did everything right. I studied. I worked hard. I gave my life to my job. How could this happen?" Ammar finally understood the complete depth of Kareem's warning. The most dangerous belief in the world was that a job equals security. One evening, Ammar sat beside his father and said gently, "Abu, you taught me to value education. Kareem taught me to understand money. Let me help you with both." Together, they rebuilt from the ground up. They listed expenses, cut liabilities, sold and used items, converted a spare room into a tutoring center, created online courses from his father's expertise, rented an old storage space, and invested Ammar's online income into long-term assets. Slowly, their finances stabilized. But something more important happened. Ammar watched his father break free from mental chains he didn't know he had. One day, with tears in his eyes, Hamid placed a trembling hand on his son's shoulder and said, "I taught you literature, but you taught me life. I am proud of you, my son." Years later, when Karim grew older, he invited Ammar for one final conversation. They sat on his quiet rooftop, the city lights flickering below. "You came to me as a boy who wanted money," Karim said, his voice weak but full of affection. "But you became a man who wants freedom. My last lesson for you is this: teach others. Free minds. The world is full of people trapped in fear. Help them escape." Ammar's chest tightened. "I will," he promised. A decade passed. Ammar became a respected financial educator, business owner, and mentor. He helped thousands understand that true wealth begins in the mind long before it appears in the bank. In one of his seminars, a young boy raised his hand and asked, "Sir, how do I become rich?" Ammar smiled, the same patient, knowing smile Karim once gave him, and replied, "First understand this. The poor work for money, the rich make money work for them. And when you're ready to learn the rest, I'll teach you." As the audience leaned forward, eager and hopeful, Ammar felt a profound realization. The boy who once felt powerless had become a man who empowered others. The cycle of wisdom had come full circle. That day, as he stepped off the stage, he whispered to himself, "This is the real wealth.